he also had quite convincing evidence that food systems that build social capital actually create higher food yields, and in more sustainable ways. There's a virtuous circle between social capital and small-scale mutual interdependence. Sustainable food systems, there is the labour capacity and willingness to work the land or the plot. There has to be continuous research and development, particularly to counter pests and what do we do in a wetter climate or a drier climate. And there has to be cheap or free knowledge transfers. It cannot be held by major, intellectual property can't be held by major corporations. So, I've set the scene, and now for a canter to the place of urban and civic agriculture. I am not saying that the answer to global hunger or to the question of entitlements is urban and civic agriculture. We need our rural communities as much, if not more than ever. And the synergies between the urban and the rural need far more careful thinking about. But I am arguing there is a really important place for urban and civic agriculture as part of the food system, but particularly important in showing the way about what a sustainable food system can look like. Now, you all would know, having this marvellous Centres for Sustainable Cities here at the University of Otago and the work they've been doing in housing and urban design, how important urban and suburban design is for health, and that's what that slide says. So, taking that slide and the material I have talked about, this is how I would talk about an urban determinants of health, but thinking about diet and physical activity. That urban planning sets the framework for land use, how we move around the city, how our culture operates around diet and physical activity. They in turn have, and there should be some reverse arrows here, I couldn't work out how to do that, but connections to nature and social connections, extremely important, and together and separately they are important contributors to improved environmental and physical health, and if one works in the health sector, importantly, avoided health costs. So I'm arguing a case that we can, by creating synergies between urban and civic agriculture and physical activity, help to design out disease. And there I build on some key population health researchers' work. So I am going to say very briefly a couple of things beyond urban and civic agriculture. I've just published a paper in the same series as the Tony Capon, Liz Hanna piece, and I've got the references at the end, on that there are some alternatives being posed at the moment for food security. One of the alternatives being posed by large food corporations is let's re-engineer the food supply, and by that they mean fortification of the food supply. Let's add nutrients into the dairy. The best example I have of research that I've just done is in the Goulburn Valley. There was a very proud fruit processing company, the SPC company. It used to buy its product from the Goulburn Valley. The Goulburn Valley is highly stressed because of drought. SPC, which is now owned not by the growers, but by Coca-Cola, is now sourcing its fruit and getting it processed in South Africa, Thailand and South America. And it knows it can't compete with the cheap supermarket home brand processed fruits. So its new marketing strategy, value adding strategy, is it will add vitamin C and fibre to those little cups of processed fruit, which 14% of which is sugar. So they're saying, well, if you're not, if you don't have access to fresh fruit and vegetables, don't worry, because we can keep value adding to our imported process from which we have removed the fibre, little cups of fruit, but we'll keep adding the nutrients back into it. This is one response, and you will increasingly hear that this is a response to food insecurity and to climate change. We don't need to keep pushing up food yields. We can just, through biotechnology, add to the existing food stock. So I counterpose that in an article that I wrote, a huge debt that I owe in that article to a woman called Kelly Donati from University of Melbourne, whose PhD is in the area of urban agriculture, if you want to follow her up. I want to make a distinction between urban and civic agriculture. For me, urban agriculture is the commercial side or the state-sponsored side of agriculture. It's small-scale growers, but selling their produce into the market. Small-scale processors selling into the market. It's peri-urban farms selling into the market. But it can be local governments' efforts to create urban green spaces and edible gardens. So there's the commercial element there is unclear. I'm going to counterpose urban agriculture and civic agriculture. I'm going to talk about civic agriculture as the non-commercial arm of this. It's not an important distinction. But I just want to say about the value of urban agriculture in some settings. This is where we're about to embark on work in the Sydney Basin. That has 2.5 million residents. It produces $1 billion worth of agriculture. It's 12% of New South Wales agricultural production. It's grown on 1% of the land in New South Wales. In the basin, 11% of agricultural employees live and work. It accounts for 20% of total vegetable production of New South Wales and 80 to 100% of perishable vegetables. It produces enormous dietary diversity. In addition to the veg, there's honey, wine and nuts, and a huge poultry industry. It does, through food markets and farm and wine trails, bring producers and consumers together, and it's really created an enormous number of alternative food processing and retail livelihood possibilities.